Okay, you made it through week 3. Let's summarize. We have various sources of financing available today when we produce content. Let's take a look at what they are and what their terms and conditions are. There are two main sources of finance that we are differentiating between. One is the recoupable finance source, and the second one is the non-recoupable finance source. Recoupable finance sources include senior loans, junior loans, which are often referred to as mezzanine loans as well, or super gap, equity investments, and deferments. Non-recoupable finance sources include production subsidies, brand integration sponsorships, crowdfunding and crowdsourcing, as well as music investments, among other. The ideal finance plan considers all of these finance sources in a balanced way. It all starts with sales agent estimates to be at a certain minimum, pre-sales to verify the market demand, production subsidies to offset the finance sources and their risks, a certain amount of a gap loan, if available, a junior loan, and the equity which will be added to balance it all in the end. What is a senior loan? A senior loan is a loan that is provided by entertainment banks, bank-like lending institutions like funds, and investors. The senior loan often contains a pre-sale loan and a gap loan. It recoups exclusively in first position from distribution revenues, and it requires a bankable sales agent and bankable distributors. The senior loan also requires a completion bond insurance. All fees, costs, charges, and interest reserves are deducted from the loan amount and paid with the senior loan amount from distribution revenues. Down payments made by the distributor on pre-sales are deducted from the loan amount. Sales fees may be deducted from the down payment. A pre-sale loan is secured by pre-sale distribution agreements, and discounting may occur subject to the bankability of the distributor. A gap loan is secured against unsold distribution rights. Unsold distribution rights are established when you take your sales estimates and deduct your pre-sales. Collateral must show 200% of the loan amount, which means if your loan amount for a gap portion is $1 million, you need to show $2 million in the take column of your unsold rights. The loan amount is capped at 20% of the budget. That means no matter how many unsold rights you might have available after doing your pre-sales, the lender will never give you more than 20% of your budget as a gap loan. What is a junior loan? A junior loan is a loan provided against unsold rights. The collateral is the unsold rights that are still available after the senior loan has recouped. The junior loan recoups exclusively behind the senior loan, distribution costs and expenses, collection fees and residuals, if applicable, from distribution revenues. The junior lender requires a bankable sales agent as well as bankable distributors, and the junior lender also requires a completion bond insurance. All fees, costs, charges, and interest reserves are deducted from the loan amount and repaid with the junior loan from distribution revenues. This loan may require a premium and sometimes back-end profit participation. It allows a term of up to 5 years. In comparison, the senior loan is usually done within 2 years. There are few risks associated when taking a junior loan under consideration. If the junior loan is in default, the lender can foreclose on the movie or the television show. It is a fairly expensive loan because interest rates are very high at times. The producer and the equity investor would lose their title, meaning the copyright on the film, and their investments in case of a default. What do we refer to when we're talking about distribution financing? Distribution financing can consider an advance from a sales agent or distributor, and this advance would recoup in first position from distribution rights revenues. And it is therefore not combinable with a senior loan, because the senior loan would recoup in the same position from the same collateral. A split rights deal is a deal in which a territory is sold in perpetuity, which means forever. For example, we had the example made in the distribution module where a distributor, which is a studio, a network station, or a streamer, would purchase the US rights in perpetuity, meaning all rights forever, and the producer would keep the international distribution rights. The beautiful component about a split rights deal is that a split rights deal is usually providing a larger license fee. An all rights deal is like a pickup deal or a buyout. In this case, all rights to the movie are sold to the distributor for a fee, meaning all rights are gone forever. What is an equity investment? There are two kinds of equity investments. There is development financing and production financing. Investors who provide development financing usually provide a smaller amount and are often angel investors. Development is financed by the way that development is included in the production budget, and because of that is paid on the first day of production, which is the day the completion bond insurance issues the insurance on the film or television show. When an investor finances the production cost, meaning the investment covers a portion of the production budget, that financing is recouped from the recoupment schedule and distribution rights revenues, which is not the case for development financing. Here are some standard terms. Both development financing and production financing investors require and often look for 20% on their money, which is a 20% premium. Also, for production investors, meaning the investors who provide a portion of the production budget, there is a profit participation applicable and an IP ownership. The profit participation usually is 50% of the investment amount related to the entire budget. For example, if an investor finances 30% of the budget, their IP ownership and profit participation would reflect 15%. Now, there are equity investors around that ask for different terms and different conditions. That is up to the investor and the producer to decide what works for them best. In the ideal world, I would suggest that an equity investment for a finance plan that includes a senior loan should not exceed 35% of the budget. It can be more if the equity investor takes over that senior loan position, in which case it could be 55% of the budget. There are a few investment criteria I would have the investor look at to make sure the investment is not too risky. For example, the investor should confirm that sufficient collateral is available, which means, are there enough rights available to be sold after the senior lender and the junior lender have recouped? Also, look at sales estimates. What do they say in the take column, because that is the worst case scenario? And are there enough pre-sales suggesting that this is a movie or a TV show that is verified in the marketplace? Also, what kind of non-recoupable finance sources are applied in the finance plan that help reduce the risk for the equity investor? Some equity investors do not require completion bond insurances, but most of them do. What are release windows? Release windows are basically a pattern by which a film is released. So the film would be released first in the theaters. A short while after, you can see the film in the theaters internationally, meaning outside of the US. After that theatrical release usually comes the DVD release, at least in areas where DVD is still a thing. After that, there's going to be a pay-per-view release, online and video on demand release, and last in line would be the airing on television. Now, recently what we have observed is that these release windows kind of meld together, meaning we have a theatrically released film that is simultaneously released on a streamer, a platform, or on a television streaming platform. So that means that these release windows can be merging together depending on what kind of film it is and also what kind of release pattern is taken on by the theatrical distributor. Now, when we're talking about a television show or television content like a TV movie, obviously the theatrical release is not applicable. What could happen here is that the television network airs the show first, and then it goes on the streaming platforms, and maybe even on DVD at last. How do sales estimates and pre-sales play into the equation of things? Sales estimates. Those are international sales projections established by a sales agent reflecting potential distribution revenues for a film or television project from the international market. These potential distribution revenues derive from international distributors who purchase an exclusive distribution license to release the film or TV show in their exclusive territory. And what are pre-sales? A pre-sale is a distribution agreement that is concluded before a film or TV show is produced and ready to be delivered to the distributor. Pre-sales often reflect the current market value of a film or TV show, and it will tell us very early on what the market demand for this piece of content actually is. Let's take a look at some potential pitfalls of distribution. Most risks related to distribution have to do with the sales agent and the distributor. Let's look at sales agents first. Our sales agent must be bankable, because if the sales agent is not bankable, we will not be able to get a bank loan. I have sales agents suggest fairly high fees and distribution expenses. In my case, I would never pay more than 25% of the international distribution rights revenues that were established by a sales agent, and that would be the case for a movie that is low to mid budget. And if it is a higher budgeted movie, I would not pay more than 15 to 20%. And in relation to distribution expenses, I usually would never pay more than 1 to 5% of international distribution rights revenues that were completed by the sales agent. I have seen sales agents project a film incorrectly by suggesting very high potential revenues to come from the international market. The problem with that is, if those revenues are not reached, the equity investor is at risk. It is often better to use a sales agent that projects a more conservative approach when it comes to sales agents. Sales agents do often issue higher sales estimates because they want to lock up a movie. I've seen sales agents not be able to do any pre-sales. Now, this could have two reasons. The first one is it has nothing to do with the sales agent. It's just that the project is not finding a market demand. The second reason is that it has everything to do with the sales agent, because the sales agent is either lazy or doesn't focus on selling the film, or does not have the relationship with the international distributors they should be having. Another issue I've seen has to do with the lineup. Now, what's a lineup? It's basically the movies that they're selling, the new movies that are being sold with every marketplace. So when a sales agent goes to a film market or a festival, they always announce new titles. And if A, the amount of title is very high, meaning they go to a market with 20 new titles, my title kind of, is covered by 20 other titles and may not be able to break through. It is much smarter for me to go with a sales agent who may announce 5 titles. And my title is hopefully one that kind of mixes well with them, because my title is a romantic comedy and the other titles are romantic comedies and thrillers for a commercial buyer. That would work. But it would not work if I sell my romantic comedy with a sales agent who is known for horror slashers. The other issue is that I don't want to work with sales agents who would like to be the one that collects the payments from the distributor. Meaning, when a sale or a pre-sale is done to a distributor, the payment that is done by the distributor needs to go to a neutral escrow account, which is a collection agent management account. It should not be going through the sales agent, because then the sales agent is the one having to report to me, and those reports often come very late, and they're not always correct, because the sales agent can deduct their sales fees, their distribution expenses, and I have no way of checking if those are actually right and correct. And I'm not suggesting that sales agents do these things in a sense that they just charge something that they shouldn't be charging, but I am saying that a sales agent is not an accountant, and I'd rather have someone specifically trained to do this collect the money, and then pay everyone. Also, sales agents often ask for very long terms because it is in their interest to take on a movie exclusively to sell it internationally and to keep that exclusive right for as long as possible. My answer to that is, let's not do that. Let's keep the term short because then I can also track the performance of the sales agent. And that's another thing. Many sales agents are slacking with their performance. And that has to do with the fact that they get new movies, which are easier to sell, and then they forget all about mine. So what I'll do in my sales agency agreements, I put in a performance clause. And that is directly connected to the sales estimates that were issued to me by the sales agent. I simply ask the sales agent, when do you think this money will come in? So for example, if a sales agent shows me a certain set of sales estimates, I would say, how much of this will come in the first 3 months? How much would come in the next 3 months? How much would come in 9 months? How much would come in a year? Give me some numbers, give me some amounts, and I will put together a performance milestone. And if these milestones are not met, I have the right to terminate the agreement. This will help me optimize the revenues for my film and keep the sales agent on track. Also, sales agents have seen to go bankrupt. This is actually not rare, unfortunately. What happens then, if my movie is under contract with them, it could fall into their bankruptcy mess and I would lose it. The idea is to include a paragraph that gives me the right to remove my movie in case of a bankruptcy. Now, what are we dealing with when we're talking about distributor pitfalls? Like sales agents, some distributors charge very high fees and expenses. And they also have very vague or confusing profit definitions. The idea here would make sure that their fees are industry standard. Distributors should not be charging more than 35%, and expenses should be kept under 5%. And the profit definition should be very clear. It's basically saying, when I make money with this movie, I'm deducting the money I paid you, which is the upfront license fee. I'm deducting my distribution fee and expenses, and then I'm sharing the goods with you. After that, I'm sharing overages. So there should be an overage split in the event something is left after the distributor has recouped their minimum guarantee and their distribution costs and expenses. Distributors often are very slow in giving us reporting regarding these overages. And sometimes it just doesn't make sense to go and check on these and audit these. But if it's a bigger territory, like a tier 1 territory, it's absolutely worth it. Distributors sometimes extend the terms and rights. I should say extend them without me knowing they extended them, meaning they're still airing the movie in their territory even though the term has expired. This is something definitely to check on and to make sure it doesn't happen, and then allow the distributor to make a payment for the extended term for the second run in that case. Some territories are very known for pirating movies. In that case, I would, for example, mention China. The option I have as a producer is not to sell to China, or sell China last. Why are sales estimates a good basis for a finance plan? The reason why sales estimates are a basis for the finance plan is because every lender and investor looks at them to consider their risk profile associated with a loan or an investment on this film. As mentioned before, sales estimates are projected international distribution revenues. And what investors and banks look at is the take estimates, which are the low estimates, because they use them to value the film or TV show and value the collateral. Pre-sales are distribution agreements concluded before a film or TV show is produced, and pre-sales are used to verify the very market demand. Sales are distribution agreements concluded after the film or TV show is finished. Unsold rights are estimates minus pre-sales, and they are used to value the collateral. So they are used especially by junior lenders and equity investors to see how much of rights can still be sold for them to recoup their loan and investment. And how do we actually connect the estimates to funding? When I look at the films or TV shows I produce or finance, I really am very closely looking at the risk I'm taking. So for me, the sales estimates are extremely important, and so are the pre-sales, because that is the only way for me to know whether or not my investment makes sense. And my time spent on a project as a producer is valued. Many producers go about this a different way, but I always look at the sales estimates and make sure that the international rights revenues are estimated to cover 70 to 75% of my budget. And when I look at pre-sales, I want to see about a third of the budget to be covered with pre-sales, because that gives me a strong indication that what I am about to produce actually has value in the marketplace. When I look at unsold rights, I look at what's still available for me as an equity investor. And when I have a junior lender, they do the same. They look at what's available for them to lend money against it. So the collateral at that time is the unsold rights, which is basically all my estimates minus the pre-sales that were concluded. When I invest in a film or a TV show, I keep my investment under 35% because it has been proven to be the most profitable balance for me. Again, other equity investors do different things. Other producers do different things. This is how I do it. I do not invest more than 35% of a film or TV show's budget in equity unless I'm also taking over the senior position, in which case I invest about 55%. This is the way I structure my investments, because that way it's been proven to be very profitable for me and my investors.